Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast, presented by BetMGM. The three men weave are back for a special edition BBOC episode, the conference tournament preview show. Going to talk about a handful of leagues today, kicking off Wednesday, and a couple on Thursday as well, as the meaningless regular season comes to a halt, and we dive into the do or die season that is conference tournament season, especially for many of these mid-low major leagues, one big leagues. Every game means the world. So we're going to hop into a ton of betting angles. We'll talk format, schedule, bracket, betting angles for opening round spots. At least we know the matchups. And then I think most importantly, where the value is in the futures market. And is that the best place to place your value? Or is it better off for you to put money lines on each team that you like and roll them forward? All that and more ahead. Kai, Jim, let's get right into the action here. Big South. Bojangles Coliseum, everyone's favorite venue, the newly minted host of the Big South Conference Tournament. The story here is UNC Asheville as the clear-cut favorite. They really waltzed through the regular season. 4-game lead on the second, third place finishers, Longwood and Radford there. Kyle, we have odds scattered across the board here on a multitude of places. Market looks like it has UNC Asheville as a 3-1 favorite to win this. Radford at 5-1, but how about Longwood at 2.5-1, despite being the slightly lower seed at 12-6 versus Asheville 16-2 in the conference. We'll talk about some of the lower seeded dogs here, but any value here on these favorites in the Big South?
Yeah, I think you look to bet Longwood or Asheville if you absolutely have to in the Big South. I think they kind of proved to be the class of the league. I wouldn't bet on Radford, the third shortest odds, because of their whole coaching situation. Nichols, their coach, recently got a DUI. It's uncertain if he's going to be back on the sidelines. A team I'm looking at as far as long shots go is USC Upstate, 16-1 in the market. They've beaten every single team seated above them. They've beaten Asheville. They beat Longwood. They beat Radford. They beat Gardner-Webb, a team they're playing in the opening round. If you're looking for a long shot, that's the direction I would go. But ultimately, I think it's going to come down to Asheville or Longwood. Neutral floor certainly helps, though, Jim, for long shots.
Yeah, Kai, I just want to follow up on the Radford point. They lost 5 of 7 down the stretch. Mm-hmm. And part of that was before Nichols got suspended, but I think the snowball just kept going without him. So it is... I don't want to eliminate them, but like when I'm looking at futures odds, I'm basically kind of taking them out and saying, all right, if I assume the 3 seed's not going to win, where can I find value there? That may be a part of why Longwood has a little bit of value, or why they're favored over Asheville. I'm not going to bet Longwood, but why they have got that favorite standing. The interesting part with the Upstate point you make, Kai, is that they're already in the quarterfinals. That's not a team that, at 16-1, they don't have to win 4 games. Mm-hmm. They've just got to beat, like you said, 3 teams that they've beaten before. Gardner-Webb, likely go to Asheville after that, or play Asheville at Bojangles in Charlotte. And then who do you meet in the title? Hard to say. I wanted to like Gardner-Webb here because that's a team I've kind of been in on all season. But at plus 550, having to go through the 1 seed on that side of the bracket, I don't love the number. There isn't anything, Matt, that I'm actually going to bet from a futures perspective from the menu we're kind of looking at here.
Just to add real quick, Matt, it's funny that Gardner-Webb is 5-1 or plus 550, and Upstate is 16-1. Upstate just beat Gardner-Webb. Upstate 7-1 or 6-1 last 7 games. I think that the pricing is a little bit mismatched.
Yeah, there. I agree with that. Although in that particular matchup, I like betting Gardner-Webb because of that kind of immediate revenge angle. But still, yeah, like a macro, if you're betting a future from a macro pricing, I'm with you. I think it's a little bit of a mispriced.
Yeah, G-Webb just lost 4 straight to end the year. Like, it's not like that's a team trending up. Whereas, like I said, Upstate, 6 of the last 7 they've won.
Mm-hmm. That's why I kind of like just laying the favorite here at 3-1 with Asheville. Last year they lost opening. Not the favorite. The 1 seed, excuse me, not the favorite, but who I think should be the favorite because of the draw. They lost first round last season to Charleston Southern. Drew Pember, I can assure you, remembers that fondly. And lo and behold, they could face Chuck South, as we called them, in a rematch if they get by High Point, who is also dangerous under the fighting Tubby Smith Jr., as I call him, who have been kind of a disaster. Gigi Smith. But man, they've just been so bad. I think Asheville gets to the championship game. Then who they see on the bottom is anyone's guess. Of note, too, all these semis and finals are early tips. I tend to think that favors the dogs So I think you see some potentially kind of weird results, uglier games, especially at the neutral site, weird place, unfamiliar location at Bojangles Coliseum. Any other final thoughts here on Big South? First round matchups you guys are looking at, maybe looking to back, favorite, dog, etc.
Bojangles isn't as big as I wanted it. It's not like a cavernous 15,000 person arena, which would definitely get me leaning towards unders. There's been some teams that I've really perceived as unders, and you get an opening matchup with Campbell and Presbyterian, two teams that grind in the half court. And I think I've been yelled at for betting Campbell unders on our other best bet show because they've had a few shootouts recently, but I do think that one is going to be slow and ugly in the first round, opening round. That's on Wednesday, March 1st, as you are listening to this.
Yeah, I think Presbyterian so go ahead, Kai.
Sorry, I'll just add one more note after you finish your point, Matt, because you're going to respond to Jim.
Yeah, I have a great point too, Kai. So let me have it here. The Blue Host, Jim, Presbo, sitting at the 10th spot. I can't believe how bad they've been. I do think they're kind of an interesting, super long Hail Mary shot to maybe win a game. Not two, but maybe two.
They've lost 17 in a row.
Like the roster is not all that different from last year when they were far more competitive. Not way more, but they're just better, right? Like there's guys in that team where you could see maybe them having a kind of an out of nowhere resurgence. You know, I thought the team would be more to the middle of the pack, middle to bottom preseason. They really just bottomed out completely in a low scoring game. And you're thinking, yeah, go ahead.
Rayshawn Harrison's been like the third best player in the WAC. He's gone from that team that was actually competent last year. And then Winston Hill's been hurt. Like there are signs of life this year, if they showed any, or while Hill was healthy, I think. And he hasn't played in any of the 17 straight that they've lost. I think the team's just kind of bad, rolled over.
White flag. Yeah, I don't get why Reddish has been so bad. I feel like he was always one of their top three last year, kind of folded. You're right, without those other big two. All right, fair points. Fine. I can see. Let's move forward.
Jumping in now.
Yeah, Kyle, go ahead.
I'm just saying this applies to every bracket we talk about. If you're going to bet a future here, don't bet the teams that have the longer path to the championship. So in this league, it's High Point, Chuck South, Campbell, and Presbyterian have to play an extra game. Very rare do we see teams like that win conference tournaments. We'll talk about that later with Missouri Valley. Just be wary of that. If you're going to take a long shot like Upstate that already, like Jim said, is in the quarterfinals.
Yep, hard agree. I think people sometimes bet these without even looking at the paths, so that obviously is very noteworthy. Let's pivot to the NEC, the worst conference in college basketball. Is that where we're at? If we want to call the Independence a conference, but
it's either this one or the one we're talking about,
or the one we're talking about next. Yeah. All right. Well, the NEC it is the worst league in America, but for my money, 8 teams are in this conference tournament here. Merrimack, despite a really dreadful non-conference, I guess every team in this league had a bad non-conference because they're just so bad. They wound up winning the dang thing again. Joe Gallo, 2 titles in his early tenure, moving up from D2 to D1 there at Merrimack College. They're playing LIU first round. Merrimack is basically even money to win this thing, depending on where you look in the market. The number 2 seed, Fairleigh Dickinson, opposite bracket. They are 2.5 to 3 to 1, depending on where you look in the market. They're playing St. Francis, Brooklyn first round. And then there's kind of a mixed bag of who knows what you're going to get with the rest of this field. Kai, do you have any profound takes in what seems like the most who the heck knows bracket of any of them?
I think that's why you look for a longer shot in this league, because it is such a parity-ridden league. Every team is pretty much the same except for LIU. Merrimack being a heavy favorite just doesn't sit right with me. I understand they played well in conference, but the best team in KenPom is Wagner as the 5 seed, and they are as high as 12 to 1 out in the market. You can find them at 12 to 1. That is a lot of value for a team that's beaten Merrimack at Merrimack. And while this conference is at the higher seeds home place, we've said it before, the NEC home court, it's not much. It doesn't mean a whole lot. So I think there's value here on longer shots. Personally, for me, Jim, Fairleigh Dickinson is where I'm going to look. I think they can be the best team in this league, best offensive team for sure. And I've seen them higher than 3 to 1 out in the market. So that's probably where I'm leaning. A longer shot would be Wagner.
Yeah, I think Wagner's the right bet in terms of value because they're at the same round as everybody else. They're in the quarterfinals. If they win, they will likely have to go to Merrimack, but they've already won there. So there's a chance that team is potentially worthy of making a run. FDU has the best guards in the league for sure. And that's if people gravitate towards that in the postseason, you could look at them. I'm going to be the vanilla boy here and pick Merrimack. I just think they're playing way better down the stretch. They've got 2 freshmen on the league's all-freshman team that I think have evolved into better versions of themselves late. That's Jordan Durkak and Javon Bennett, their backcourt. And then since Minor has been truly comfortable in the paint, their best player, they've been thoroughly dominant. They closed the year winning 8 in a row. Pretty much none of them close. Like margins are 21, 16, 12, 8, 7, 13, and then they're a little bit closer. But I do think that Merrimack has actually proven to be the best team, despite not being rated as highly in KenPom as Wagner, because the opening stretch of the non-con, they were getting slaughtered by teams without Minor. So I think it's actually decently priced. If you want to take a swing, it would be Wagner.
Plus, they are basically even with Wagner in KenPom. It's 315 and 316.
There you go.
Yeah. Merrimack would be, probably exactly like a 3.2 half-point favorite at home if they face off in the second round, which they would if they both won. And Wagner's already won there. They've already won at Fairleigh Dickinson, the number 2 seed in the bottom. I'm with Kai. I think Wagner's the right play at 8-1. Even though I agree with Jim that Merrimack is the best team right now, the way they're playing.
Yeah, so since the start of February, per Bart Torvik, Merrimack 173rd nationally, like actually kind of decent. Second best team, Stonehill, not even playing in the event because it's their first year transitioning. Yeah. And then Wagner's 306th nationally since start of February. So like a very clear divide on who the best team has been. And again, I think it's because of the young guys have started to develop, but I wouldn't fault anybody for taking that Wagner price instead of Merrimack's basically even money.
Any intrigue in the any specific first round matchups? Haven't really talked about St. Francis, the Red Flash Kai versus the other Blue Devils of Central Connecticut, or FDU versus St. Francis Brooklyn. I kind of like both dogs actually. They're on the road.
No, Fairleigh Dickinson, I think, is going to roll Brooklyn over. I really think they're going to make a run in this tournament. I have not been able to figure out Central Connecticut for the life of me. St. Francis is a weird team too, the Pennsylvania one, because they've had so many guys in and out of the lineup this season. A hard team to trust. However, they probably have the best home court advantage of any NEC team if you're going to go for that angle, and they are playing at home in the first round.
Yeah, best home court advantage, and I think best player. Josh Cohen, 6'10", total dominant big. He's had a couple of relatively big games against a small Central Connecticut front court. Last time he played 22-7. It's kind of his MO there. Maybe not a huge edge, but definitely agree with Kai that Loretto in Western Pennsylvania is the best home court in the league with very little travel.
Yeah, and second's probably Merrimack. So kind of back to Jim's point there, and they basically secure home court throughout the entire bracket if they advance all the way through. That's all we have for NEC. I mean, final thoughts. Again, sort of a crapshoot type league. But Merrimack is playing like a team that's a cut above, even though the overall analytic numbers don't necessarily bear that out. All right, let's go to the OVC. This one for a low major. It's odd to see low majors held exclusively at a neutral site for every game, but that's what we have here with the OVC at the Ford Center, Kai, in beautiful Evansville, Indiana. Wild bracket here, very much like the WCC, which we will get to in our Thursday section. Again, all of these leagues we're talking about right now, Big South, NEC, OVC, tipping off on Wednesday. But the OVC setting up their bracket like the WCC, heavily stacking the deck in favor of the higher seeds, which I personally love. I think that's it pays proper homage to the regular season results. League's been a disaster, but when you're talking about backing any team outside of the top 4 seeds, it's a tall order. Morehead, Tennessee Tech are the top 2 seeds. They get auto buys to the semis. Tennessee State, UT Martin are the 4 and 3 seed respectively. They'll start in the quarters, and they await the winner of the play-in game first round. That's 5 seed SEMO versus Lindenwood at the top of the bracket, and then number 6 seeded SIUE versus number 7 Southern Indiana at the bottom. I cannot believe SIUE fell to a 6 seed. That's my opening thought on this bracket and just the way this thing shakes out, Kai. But I don't know how you back a team that's got to win 1, 2, 3, 4 games to march all the way to the title in 4 consecutive days.
Yeah, the 3 seed and the 7 seed in this bracket were separated by 1 game in conference play, so it's basically a big jumble. But yeah, you look at those first 4 teams: SEMO, Lindenwood, SIUE, Southern Indiana. They have to win 4 games in 4 days to win the title. Morehead State and Tennessee Tech have to win 2. So in my opinion, if you're looking for a future in this league, you just focus on Morehead and Tennessee Tech. Those are the 2 teams that have buys to the semis. Morehead, in my opinion, is by far the best team in this league. I think they will end up winning it. But there's value on Tennessee Tech, maybe at plus 350, plus 360, because they can shoot. They're arguably the best shooting team in this conference, and over a 2-game sample size, a lot of variance can happen. They could get scorching hot and win both games. If you want a little bit of a longer shot, Jim, for me, it's Tennessee Martin. They probably have the most potential, most raw talent on the roster, certainly in the backcourt.
Yeah, you could definitely make a case they have the best backcourt in the league. Parker Stewart started at Indiana for almost all of last year. KJ Simon has been a very productive player in this league for several years now. And then Jordan Sears is a transfer from Gardner-Webb. We just talked Big South, and he's given them a pretty steadying influence at point guard this year as well. So if you want to ride with the backcourts, like we said, Fairleigh Dickinson, the NEC, I think it'd be UT Martin here. But Morehead State's really elevated themselves into a class of their own as well. They've won 11 of their last 12 since February 1st. They're 118th at Bart Torvik. Like, they are nearly a top 100 team. That's how good they've been. I think there's a long feeling out process. They changed over basically everybody in the lineup, whole new cast of characters, and took Preston Spradlin's credit, the coach. He lost Johni Broome to Auburn, and the team has just kept rolling in this league. So really, really impressive stuff. Stylistically, also, Morehead, the only team that slows the game down. Every other team likes to run. I think that probably helps in a postseason setting that Morehead is the most comfortable in a half-court game when possessions play up. But they're priced very, very heavily as the favorite. So I don't think there's a ton of value on Morehead State.
Yeah, I don't either. Although I look at, just put Merrimack and Morehead next to each other, kind of harken back to our NEC discussion. You're getting a better price with Morehead, who only has to win one last game. Now I know that there's other factors here. I'm just kind of slicing it through that lens, but I kind of like Morehead, and I think it's just more of an indictment on the rest of the league. The only teams I like in this league are are in that kind of play-in round, right, with SIUE and SEMO, who I think starting to improve after they've gotten healthier later in the season. It's unfortunate that I think we're seeing two of the more intriguing teams with the deck stacked against them. I was just looking at the bracket history here since 2018. First year was held at Ford Center. It's basically been a Murray State, Belmont, Morehead, musical chair. So it's the first year like an actual. I mean, I know Morehead's the favorite, but they're not as good as they were with Johni Broome. And the field feels much more open for the first time in a while. Still, the way the bracket's set up, I think makes this for a pretty clear slant toward the favorites. I guess if you have to get involved, I'd maybe take Morehead and maybe a flyer on SIUE, but I don't have any data in front of me that shows winning 4 games in 4 days as being a likely proposition.
Yeah, that could perhaps be a situation where money lines it might work out. The problem is that SIUE is second in the league in KenPom, so the odds are not going to be totally in your favor on those money lines. Like they're second, they're going to be favored probably by a couple points in the first game. They're definitely going to be favored in their second round game against Tennessee State. So perhaps not as strong there, but 11-1 when they have to win 4 in 4 days. I can't quite get on board, Kai.
Yeah, and can I say one more thing here? Their first round matchup, Matt. They play Southern Indiana. You know that's located?
Evansville.
That's located in Evansville.
That's right.
So there's going to be screaming Eagles fans there. It could be. It's not a home game, but it's in their city. I think Southern Indiana might win that first game.
Yeah, SIUE really shot themselves in the foot. We thought they were going to be a little bit of a juggernaut after they beat SLU in the non-con, but a pretty non-graceful fall there. All right,
Matt,
that concludes.
Jim, go. I like SEMO in that first round. They beat SEMO they beat Lindenwood by 23 the first time they played them. And the second time they lost on the road in double overtime. Crazy 92 possession game. I think you get a stronger effort out of SEMO. Lindenwood had to make a buzzer beater just to make this tournament. That's what it took, like their final game of the year. I think SEMO, who will probably be a 5-ish point favorite, is still a decent bet there against Lindenwood.
I agree. Off that emotional entry into tournament first season. Yeah. And SEMO's just more talented. And you could argue actually been undervalued because, again, they had some injuries earlier in the year. But, man, total crapshoots here. A lot of teams I just don't trust. So not going to bet them here in this crapshoot of a field. Let's pivot to Thursday. Stronger leagues kicking off on Thursday. Arch Madness in the Missouri Valley Conference. And, of course, the West Coast Conference tournament, the Gonzaga St. Mary's duel. That should be, we'll get to that in a sec. That should be a fun one if those two teams end up slotting against each other. But first, Kai, we're going to St. Louis, where the Arch Madness is hosted on an annual basis. League's always good. And despite losing some key pieces this year with who left the league? I'm already
Loyola
blanking.
Chicago.
Loyola Chicago, yeah. The league's still awesome. And when you have two teams playing as well as Drake and Bradley are at the top of the bracket, it seems like those two are on a collision course for the automatic bid. Drake sitting at plus 155, so about 1.5 to 1. Bradley at 2 to 1, and then the next closest is Indiana State there at 5.5, 6 to 1, or sorry, 6.5, 7 to 1. Southern Illinois 7.5, 8 to 1. Belmont at 8.5, 9 to 1. And then there's a drop off from there. Jim, going to you first. What jumps out at you from a just broader future perspective? Any of these teams with good value and a good path?
Well, you've got Drake as the 2 seed that's favored. Not the first time we've seen that in our little tournament reviews here. I kind of think it's justified, though. Bradley has been a total wagon at home, but away from home, they have not been the same team. This is not going to be played in Peoria. That's kind of an issue for them. I think that could be somewhat of a problem. I think Belmont's the team with the intriguing draw here. They're sitting at the 4 seed. They've already beaten Bradley twice this year. Swept them. So they've got that edge over the 1 seed. They beat Indiana State, I believe, once. I can't find it.
Yeah, they only played once. Yeah.
Yep. So the league being bigger means there's not the double round robin. But so they've like kind of controlled their half of the bracket. And you can make the argument that, hey, a young team getting better at this stage of the season with Gillespie and Tyson. I think Belmont's at least intriguing in terms of value given their draw, Kai.
I think they're the best value. I think it's funny to see Indiana State as shorter odds with them. I know their first game's Evansville, so it's basically whatever, you're going to win. But yeah, Belmont beat Indiana State this year. I understand the KenPom ranks. Indiana State outranks Belmont. But yeah, I agree. If they were in Drake's side of the bracket, I wouldn't take Belmont. Drake handled them easily in the 2 games they played, and maybe that's also a reason to stay away from Belmont. Can they ultimately beat Drake? Who knows? Southern Illinois split with Drake during the season, and that's kind of a murderer's row of a side of the bracket, in my opinion. You have Drake, Murray State, who's not a pushover, Missouri State, who's pretty good, and SIU all in the same kind of pod. It's kind of a murderer's row there. I'd probably look at Bradley at 2 to 1, or I'd look at Belmont at 8 to 1.
Man, this is tough. As every Arch Madness is. I like Indiana State the most, but it's just such a bummer they fell to that number 5 slot. So they're going to have to win 4 games in 4 days here. It's just a tough, tall ask, especially against the rugged Valley competition they'll face. I'm taking Drake. I'm just looking at the field here, looking at Bradley, who they have to play the first 2 rounds and who Drake would have to maybe line up with. I just like the path better for Drake, in my opinion. I know Valpo's playing better and could be dangerous as that 10 seed sleeper with the talent they have, but I don't trust Murray State away from home. I think Drake gets by the winner of that game. I think they're better than whoever they see at the bottom, which would be Southern Illinois, Missouri State, or UIC. Let's be honest, it probably won't be UIC. So I just think this Drake is a team of destiny. A bunch of super duper seniors that came back, ran it back a couple of years in a row, haven't quite got that glory that they deserve. So who knows? Bradley has been a darling in this tournament before. I think they've won it I think 2 or 3 times in the last 7 years. So I think maybe that tournament success plays well. Brian Wardle obviously knows what he's doing with the clipboard. Value futures, Kai. What do you think?
Missouri State swept Drake this year.
They did. I know that was weird. Maybe the defensive physicality plays up well.
Yeah,
they are. It
really is. But SIU swept Missouri State. There's a lot of matchup
rock, paper, scissors.
Right.
Yeah. Matt, I think we should mention, along with some of the future stuff, the Missouri Valley unders. It is a huge darling bet for a lot of people, dating back to 2005, 2006. So in the Bet Labs database, unders in this event 103 and 57, 64.4%.
Pretty good. Now
that is heavily weighted towards like the 2005 2012 stretch was really strong. From about 16 till now, it's far less. It's probably about 53%. I'd have to refilter this, but it does feel like the market is caught on a little bit, and there's not such an auto bet value on just hammering the unders. So I'd be a little cautious that a lot of the profitability in those numbers are from old seasons.
Yeah, that's a great. I think it's last year didn't overs outpace unders. So I've actually looked at the breakdown of
last year was 6-2 unders went 6-2. That was actually kind of a resurgence for them a little bit.
I would tread lightly tracking or trying to chase the those trends, because you're right, Jim. I think it's important to look at the last couple of years, especially when the market is adjusted. Like even odds makers are digging in more this time of season. They're not just copy pasting Ken Pom or Bart Torvik. They're making their own adjustments. And I think people who know what they're doing are playing some of these technical trends pretty early. So now if you're waking up at 10 a.m. on a Thursday, like, oh, I guess I'll bet the Valley unders. I checked the number. Chances are it's probably been bet down already, and to the point where it's not really worth the bet. But no, very astute point on the total angle.
Since 0506, there's that's 17 tournaments, because they actually did play the 2020 tournament before COVID.
Right.
Only 2 have finished under 500 for unders. Only
right.
2 of the events, but there's been 4 of them that were exactly 500. So pretty much every year you're fighting a decent proposition. There has not been a single year where the unders got shelled. So if you really want to get in on it, I think if you get decent numbers early, it's worth maybe looking at.
Yeah, I wonder just the fact that they have this kind of front loaded in the tournament schedule season, that the wear and tear of a daunting conference schedule, you kind of turn it over pretty quickly, especially if you're playing 3 games in 3 days or 4 in 4 days. If you're trying to make a deep run, that's going to wear on your legs, no doubt. Favorite future bet? I'm still trying to decide. Kai, do you have your horse yet picked? Or are you staying away here? You don't see any good value.
No, I said I liked Belmont. If I had to choose a future, or Bradley, okay. Yeah, one of those teams. Yeah. In general, futures for conference tournaments, they're kind of a fool's gold type of bet, I think, in my opinion.
Tricky.
There's really high hold.
You got to really like one. I agree.
Sportsbook. It's kind of tough. So I'd probably look to just get into a pool with some awesome people like Stuckey, for instance, or just play money line rollover game. Yeah.
I think Belmont's the decent value, but like if you're saying I have to pick a team to win, like I think Drake's going to win. I just don't think there's value at plus 155 or whatever.
Yep. All neutral site conference tournaments does no favors to the favorites. Let's head out west for our final tournament on today's preview special. West Coast Conference. The Zags and the Gales are on a collision course. Love how the odds makers have basically pinned these at minus 105, minus 115. Slight edge toward the Gales. But effectively, the market has these two at a coin flip. How about Santa Clara, the third highest favorite at plus 500 to 1. 50 to 1, excuse me. The 500 won't make any sense. 50 to 1, Santa Clara, BYU 50 to 1. Everyone else is 100 to 1 or higher. So we can pretty much have this entire discussion hovered around the Gonzaga versus St. Mary's in terms of the future value, who you're looking to take there. But some potential first round matchups that have some intrigue as well. Let's start with just the macro future market, Kai. Gales, Zags in a vacuum. Who you taking? Basically a coin flip here with the odds.
Yeah, it's basically it's a regular bet, right? Minus 105, minus 115. I've seen minus 110s on both sides. I'm taking Gonzaga.
There's one book that has Gonzaga minus 130, St. Mary's plus 115. So
yeah.
Make sure you shop and get that better price.
Shop.
Yep.
I'm taking Gonzaga, and this bracket is like the ultimate FU to the lower seeds. Portland, San Diego, Pacific Pepperdine have to win 5 games in 5 days. That's absolutely crazy. And then it steps down from there.
It is 5 and 6 at least, because they take Sunday off
5
for
and
BYU.
6.
That's
You're
the
right.
one caveat. But still,
5 and 6 games,
ridiculous.
Still quite a bit. Yeah, the odds are stacked against them, and St. Mary's and Gonzaga get to chill till Monday, win two in a row, and they've dominated the league all year. So I'm taking Gonzaga. They also don't have to play LMU, and LMU is the only team that's beaten both St. Mary's and Gonzaga. So give me the Zags.
Yeah, I'm with Kai. I think Gonzaga wins this tournament. If you can find this minus 105 on Gonzaga, I'm into that. They closed minus 5.5, almost minus 6 at home in Spokane.
Mm-hmm.
That tells you that if they played on a neutral, it's probably going to be Gonzaga favored by, 2 or so. And if you're getting minus 2, but you're really getting minus 105 in the futures market, that's pretty solid. I'm not super stressed about either team's draw in the semifinals. BYU has been a little bit spicy against these two teams. They should have beaten St. Mary's in Provo, and they gave Gonzaga 2 decent games as well. Santa Clara has also been a little bit feisty, but Gonzaga's biggest troubles were on the road, except when they played LMU, and they're not going to play LMU because I don't think LMU beat St. Mary's. So circling that all back, Gonzaga minus 105 to minus 110, I think has like legitimate value from a price perspective. Like I think it'll be steeper than that in the title game. So the Zags for me, Matthew.
I agree. My one concern though, Yeah, I'm generally in the camp of I'm not worried about the semifinal draws, but Gonzaga was down like 15 to Santa Clara, I believe, at Clara in the first meeting between these two. They came back and won late. I mean, the Zags usually take care of business when they need to. That's why the LMU loss was so shocking, just to see them against the wall on the ropes, and they actually couldn't close it. And Herb Sendek's a great game planner, great schemer. So I don't think it's an automatic foregone conclusion that they advance, but a fairly likely, and to the point where I think it's not even fully priced into the odds. If you can get Gonzaga closer, like that -110, whatever book you mentioned, Jim, that has -130, I think it's a sharper shade of the number, especially given that I think Gonzaga is just a slightly, I don't know, higher power rated team than St. Mary's, and the LMU threat is probably greater than Santa Clara. But anyway, any first round matchups? Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Just going to keep bringing up these since February 1st filters on Bart Torvik, because I think it gives a decent idea of who's playing better at this stage of the year. So since February 1st, St. Mary's 27th per Bart, Gonzaga 3rd. Like Gonzaga is playing like that elite team. Kai, I think you've been maybe the most stringently loyal to that Gonzaga is elite narrative, and they're starting to really show that of late.
Yeah, I'm a Zags boy, Matthew. Never lost faith.
Fun little wrinkle. I will be betting on Chicago State, who is not in this conference. They will be playing Gonzaga on Wednesday, a game they don't know why Gonzaga is scheduled, but Gonzaga basically has a little exhibition tune-up here before they go in the WCC tournament. Chicago State has not played since February 19th. They've been off for three weeks looking at film, tape, trying to break down the Gonzaga transition attack. So look to take the Bobcats on their final West Coast tour of the independent, yet very successful against the spread season for the Bobcats.
They've been there for a couple of days too already.
They already got there and got settled.
Yeah, they're there. They're practicing on their Gonzaga's floor already. Yeah,
love to see it. First round matchups, Jim. Portland, San Diego, Pacific, Pepperdine, the only two we actually know for certain. With a couple, that next round, BYU versus the winner of the Portland, San Diego matchup, San Francisco versus the winner of Pacific, Pepperdine. I'm probably going to bet the Waves. I feel like Lorenzo Romar is actually pretty good in the tournament just because he's so bad in the regular season that he actually has value in the conference tournament with all the talent he has. Am I off my rocker?
No, you're not crazy. I don't have a strong opinion on that one. I will be betting Portland. I think they smashed San Diego, who has been really shorthanded, horrific defensively. And you could make the case that this talented team finally shows up in the postseason, but their two Pac-12 transfers, Eric Williams and Jaden Dallaire, have not been playing. They've been hurt. And Portland, I think, is still a little bit undervalued because of how they played in the stretch where they were injured. So in the postseason, I go back to last year, Portland had a first round game where they beat San Diego by 18, and then they got crushed by Santa Clara. I think something similar happens this year. I'll take the Pilots. If it's anywhere like -4, it's 2 on KenPom, but I bet it's -4 in actual betting. I'd still take Portland.
Yeah, I like Portland as well.
Yeah, they've lost 4 in a row, man. I wonder if Portland just finally kind of hit a wall and waved the white flag. Funny that they're actually better than last year's team in KenPom, but they are perceived to be a lot worse this year just because of their record. I think it just goes to show how the schedule was very fortuitous for the Pilots last year. Now they actually had to play all the big boys this season. As on top of the injury thing Jim mentioned, it really caught up to them. Final bets for me, as I mentioned, I think I'm going to target the Zags. If you can get close to -110 or a coin flip. Kai, rehash what you're looking in the WCC here.
Yep, Zags would be my bet. I mean, shoot, they're offering 1,000 to 1 on Pacific and San Diego. If you just want to burn $1 and bet $1 to win $1,000, sure. But it's not going to happen. But hey, crazier things have happened.
LMU 100 to 1 for a team that's already beaten St. Mary's. No, I'm not doing it either. Jim,
it's weird that LMU has beaten. Well, I guess they got the 4 seed. I've heard it's BYU being the 5 is the surprising part. Like a team we sort of perceive as the 3rd best team in the league. They've got to win multiple games. I could buy it a little with LMU. I think what they did down the stretch to St. Mary's is kind of repeatable. They just put them in ball screens and they've got a dynamic scorer. And Shelton tore them up in that game. It was really kind of surprising because St. Mary's would not help off of 3-point shooters. So I could see a little bit of a sprinkle being worthwhile on LMU.
The game 2 of the Gonzaga game just frightens me. If they end up being in the finals, Zags beating by 43, it's kind of like, oh, all right, never mind.
Yeah. I'm betting Gonzaga here -110 or whatever, and I think that's the right wager.
Yeah.
I'll say this is maybe the most interesting tournament in terms of just, aesthetically pleasing. Every game, I think, has some intrigue for one reason or another. A lot of good players, stars, coaches, programs. Just the league is definitely continuing its uprise of relevance up the national spectrum. Final thoughts, gentlemen, before we sign off here. I think that concludes our coverage. Locks and winners only were provided. Kai, takeaways?
Shop around.
Advice, wisdom?
Shop around. Prices vary. You can create, a sort of an artificial lower hold by shopping around and getting some good numbers on these teams if you're really into betting futures in the conference tournaments. And then I would play as many pools as possible because it's fun. It's exciting. I love it. Favorite time of year.
One thing I like doing, if your book allows it, not every one of them does, but sometimes if you really like a couple favorites, parlaying them together. I actually kind of like that in futures more than I like it in individual games because I think it really cuts into the juice for that. So like I have already parlayed Colgate and Liberty to win the Patriot and the A-Sun. So if you're looking at, you really like Merrimack and Drake or something, you want to put them together. I'm not recommending that, but I do think some of the parlays can be fun with futures.
Yeah, just kind of how we did in the preseason, right? You bet a couple of horses. You bet the favorite if you like Iona in the MAC, but then maybe you take a long shot on a flyer that you think is good as sort of a hedge. I think that approach definitely has merit here in this same setting or in this tournament setting. Well, gentlemen, March will arrive tomorrow or today if you're listening on Wednesday. Happy March. The madness is here. And thank you for stopping by on another episode of the Big Bets on Campus presented by BetMGM. We are the Weave and we are out. Take care.